What is going on, everyone? Jonathan here with another podcast interview, and I am excited, really, really excited today to be joined by Phil Jones. Phil, thank you so much for being here.
Jonathan, great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, well, you just got back into the UK, correct? You were just letting me know
Correct.
that?
I just came in from a flight from Miami and took my family back across the pond to be back in the UK for the summer.
So do you split your time between the US and the UK?
Pretty much, yeah. You're going to ask me how much here and how much there. I still don't have an answer to that question. It's just whatever is necessary at the time. And with the crazy world that we've currently been in, many of those choices have been taken out of my hands.
Awesome. You said family. Do you have kids? Are you married?
I'm married, yeah, and I have 4 children, 4 daughters. So I have twin baby girls who are 2 years old today. And then I have a 14-year-old and 11-year-old as well.
Wow. Happy birthday to them. That's incredible. I have 4 myself, 2 and 2, two boys, 2 girls, all under 8. So it's
Wow.
we're maybe sharing some of the same the same learning experiences and things like that, although you're a bit ahead of me. But I'm really excited to talk today about your book, Exactly Where to Start. And you've written a couple of books.
7.
About this topic. What are the other books? I'm holding one of them here, Exactly Where to Start.
So I've got exactly where to start, exactly what to say, exactly how to sell, how to persuade and get paid, toolbox, magic words, exactly what to say for real estate agents, and then a couple of other earlier projects that we'll choose not to mention.
So you are on 2 different topics that I hear. You're a speaker, and you help coach people, and you also write. And you said exactly, you wrote this book on selling, and I think those are 2 things that are really daunting to a lot of people, right? People would much rather, it's been quoted saying, they'd much rather die than speak up on stage or something like that. And we're talking about speaking and selling, and I think selling has definitely gotten some negative association. You have kind of this Wolf of Wall Street excited bravado, and then you have people who are not willing to sell or don't feel comfortable selling because they don't want to come off slimy or whatever.
Yeah.
How did you get into doing 2 things that most people find so incredibly challenging?
I had the gift of innocence in my professional career. So I started with my first business when I was 14 years of age, started knocking on the doors of my neighbors and asking them quite politely whether they wanted to have their cars washed. And some said yes, and others said no, but most just asked me how much I charged, which I very quickly realized meant they were remarkably interested in what I had to offer. So I did okay with that little car cleaning business, so much so that by the age of 15, I didn't go to school quite as often as I should. And I remember being invited in by my teachers questioning my attendance, to which I just responded to them with a question, which was, well, how much money are you making, sir? And nobody would tell me at the time how much school teachers were earning. But I later realized that at 15 years of age, my little car cleaning business was having me generate more revenue than the bulk of my school teachers. Wow. So I had this kind of fortunate position of being young and innocent with my first steps into entrepreneurship, my first steps into leadership, my first steps into all things that are related towards business growth, that nobody told me I was supposed to be scared, and nobody told me that I wasn't supposed to be able to do these things. And I hadn't heard that wasn't the status quo. So that gift of innocence was very, very valuable in my early career. And was probably the biggest reason why I've never had so many confidence issues towards any of these things.
So by just not overthinking it, it sounds like you didn't really go down negative mental pathways about whether you should or shouldn't. You just kind of did.
I just never got there. I never had anybody tell me I couldn't. I never had anybody tell me that was the wrong thing to do, that you shouldn't be able to do these things. For me, it was the most natural thing to do in the world. And I never thought about asking for money. I thought I was offering a service that would be helpful to people that I decided my own value on. And if they were prepared to pay, I was happy to deliver the service. It was never even in my head that I was selling something. It was making something available that I thought was useful and sticking a price tag on it.
That's an incredible differentiation. And I want to get and touch on that. But I want to ask first, did sales for you and entrepreneurship, did it start at 14? Was that something that you learned from your parents? Did it just kind of hit you one day of like, this is an opportunity? Where did that, or was it earlier? Was there an example there? Where did that start?
I guess, I mean, my dad's worked for himself forever. And that hard work ethic that comes from what it takes to be an entrepreneur was something I'd seen all of my life that I can remember back of what it took to be up early, back late, doing extras, and there not being such a thing as a day off. So that was kind of normal to me. I was blessed to get into some decent schools when I was younger, and that was where I got more of the insight that I was supposed to go to college and get a good degree so I could get a good job and work in that good job my way up the ladder for the rest of ever. And that just didn't feel right to me. I didn't feel like something that I saw for myself. And I had passion and aspiration and interest in the likes of, say, Richard Branson's work and a guy called Alan Sugar at the time, and people who had started to celebritize entrepreneurship in some way. So I think, 13th birthday, I was reading Screw It, Let's Do It by Richard Branson and The Virgin Way and things like that. So I was an avid reader in my younger years, and that gave me some passion towards thinking about what's possible. And I have a very simple belief, and I think it's a belief I'm very happy for others to share. And my belief is simple, is that if somebody else can do it, can somebody else be me? And I phrase that purposefully as a question, because it allows you to look inside yourself and answer that question honestly. Like sometimes the answer is no. I don't care how much I want to be an NBA basketball player. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do the work. I'm not good enough. I don't meet the mold. Like it's just not going to be me. But lots of times you explore that question and you realize, well, yeah, I can. I can compare the whole of me with the whole of that. And I can learn enough to say, well, I could follow those reverse engineered steps and I can achieve a version of that success for myself. So that curiosity and inquisitiveness has always been a part of my makeup. And I think entrepreneurship and any form of personal growth is because you have a curious and problem-solving mind that says, I'm prepared to have a go and figure this out every step of the way without having an end-to-end plan ahead of time.
I love that. And I love that you kind of have prefaced this by saying that you entered into entrepreneurship fairly innocently. I think people a lot of times might enter a entrepreneurial endeavor with doubts already, kind of, or voices in their head, whether it's coming from themselves or someone in their community that's saying that they can't accomplish something. So they're already fighting before they even accomplish or before they ever accomplish anything or hit any real obstacles. But I want to talk about exactly where to start your book here, because for me, it was a very practical read. I started underlining stuff immediately, which I was like, why am I underlining? This is the first several sentences of the book right here. Like the people feel, think, and act differently. And for me, I wanted to say, at the time when I read this, you wrote this in 2018, correct?
Yep.
So at the time I read this, it was just right as soon as the pandemic had happened. And in my business, we had to completely shut down entirely. And we still are in the rebuilding process of that. But I found a lot of similarities to what I was doing, maybe starting again, and what many people may be doing, starting again, starting new careers. Pivot is kind of was the big word for 2020. How do you think about starting something new? So many people, maybe they're starting careers or whatever. What do you think is the first step that people should take?
Okay, it depends where they're at. So you saying somebody coming from nowhere to somewhere, or somebody doing something that might want to start something else?
So let's going from nowhere. Let's take someone graduating college, and they have a decent idea of what they think that they want to do, right? They have a degree that they may have changed a couple of different times, and now they say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get started here. And there's, you could intern for a long time. You could go to school ad nauseum.
Yeah. I call those people experts in getting ready, right? Often they spend a lifetime becoming an expert in getting ready and never really get started. And one of the reasons I wrote Exactly Where to Start is because I was tired of meeting people through my travels on the speaking circuit of people that nearly did something. And we all know them, right? The people that, I was going to start a thing, or I had this great idea, or there was this one time I was gonna, and every time they say it, my little voice inside my head says, well, why didn't you? Like, what stopped you? And I think people overthink it. They want to get to the finish line. If you're looking to start anything, there are really only two questions you need to know the answer to first. And if you can dig into these answers, you find clarity. The questions are really simple, but they're challenging to answer. The first question is, who are the people you're looking to serve? And the second question is, what are the problems you're looking to help them solve? They're the only two questions you need to know the answer to. Without those, you get lost in the wrong thing. Like, people talk about what they want to be or what they want to do, and then they make the whole thing about them. And you can't start any venture that is focused on you and your success. Your success comes as a byproduct of the results you achieve for others. And I think what you can do by digging into those questions is you can then find multiple ways of being able to achieve that same outcome, which is fun. Because as we went through 2020, right, I went from 100 speaking gigs on the road in the previous year with a calendar in February and March that was looking like I was going to have my best on the road speaking year ever. Book sales were going gangbusters. I was in the sweetest spot of my life. And from March the 11th to March the 30th, all of that disappeared. Logistics meant books couldn't be shipped in any great way, shape, or form. And my speaking calendar all got postponed or rearranged or renegotiated into something new. It was crazy town. But when people say to me, Phil, did you pivot? My answer is no, I've done what I've always done. I've helped people navigate challenging situations in their business, and I've served my family, and I've served the people that I call clients. Like, that's all I've ever done. The medium or modality is going to continually change. But I think if you get stuck in the ways of this is the thing that I want to do, then what you're going to find is that that thing is no longer the thing you should be doing, and you're going to get stuck on that. So work at those two questions, and you start to find something you might be able to go the distance on and play the long game with.
When someone says to you, or when you hear the phrase, do what you love, what does that bring to mind? Because there's this whole discussion of doing what you love versus satisfying a need in the market. And I hear something a little bit different from you. Maybe that's coming from an incorrect starting point.
I think you could find ways of loving what you do, and the way in which you do things should be something that brings you joy. But what my experience of trying to monetize the thing that you love in its entirety, from the thousands of people that I've interviewed and met on this journey, is you end up losing the thing you love. That's what ends up happening, is you end up taking the thing you once loved and turning it into something that you hate. And I give you a clear example is my wife is a very, very talented fitness instructor. She's brilliant at it. And when she's delivering classes for other people, she loves the praise, she loves the recognition, she enjoys it to like the nth degree. She also enjoys taking her own classes, running fitness classes with friends, running things by herself, and enjoy it. The second she tried to monetize her passion and think about it as a professional career, then she had to be thinking about marketing those services, pricing those services. What about when somebody wants to cancel? How do I go about then dealing with times where I want to be away? How do I deal with a conflict where I really want to be at my daughter's thing for her birthday, but I've got a commitment towards a client? What do I do when the space changes on me? All the stuff that comes with running an organization. And when she went down those sorts of tracks, she started to not like the thing that she once loved. Mm. And this is something I see all the time. And if you are starting something on your own, you are signing a commitment to yourself that you are going to serve a purpose, not your purpose, a purpose, for a sustained period of time. So you got to get clear on the fact that you give a damn about that, not because you love it, but because you care about it. And there's a difference between loving something and caring about it. And the care part, I think, is more important. You've got to care profusely around this that says, even when the game changes, you'll still want to play. Even when the game gets tough, you're still going to play. And even when the game looks like you're about to lose, you're still thinking about ways that you can stay in the game.
I like that a lot. I think that is kind of a alternate opinion maybe than the whole do what you love conversation. I've heard people come at both sides of that.
Well, the do what you love conversation is commercially viable, right?
Yeah.
If I wanted to run a training company teaching people how to build a personal brand, or teaching people how that they could make money off their own area of expertise or turn their passion into profit, I'd be telling people to do what they love, because that's what they want to hear. They want to hear they can turn the thing they love into the thing they're going to get paid for, but they're often hearing it from people who haven't got the experience of seeing that play out over 20 years or more. I would rather look at trying to say, how do you find ways of incorporating what you love into the thing that you're doing?
In parallel, I've noticed that a lot of people may say, oh, I don't want to monetize that. To your point, to your story, in your wife's experience, they will say, oh, I don't want to monetize it. I don't want to create a business out of this. I don't want to, even when they get a compliment about it, or, hey, you should do this professionally, or how much would you charge me? Oh, no, I don't want to, because I don't want to convolute it. And so that's an interesting perspective, the difference between caring and loving something. And when you do care, you continue to do it, no matter if it's tough, if you're winning, if you're up, you're down, whatever part. So you talked about the two different questions that you should be asking, yourself. And it's an inward focus, right? Who am I? And then how am I serving my clients? Is that correct?
Well, it's who are the people you serve and what are the problems you solve for them? So it's bigger than just the kind of clients piece. And let's give an example. So if somebody said to me they wanted to open a blank business, what could the blank be? Let's just pick any random one and we'll dive into this.
How about a mechanic shop?
People start by saying they want to open a mechanic shop. So what they do is they do all the work to think, I need this equipment, I need this premises, I need this number of people, etc. I say, who are the people you're looking to serve? And they're like, well, people who need mechanic stuff. I'm like, yeah, but who? And they're like, well, like people when their cars are broken. I'm like, well, where are those people going right now? And they're like, well, I don't know. And this is another example of being an expert that's getting ready. If I could say, who are the people that you're looking to serve? And they're like, well, I want to serve people who have broken cars. I'm like, yeah, but who are the people particularly you'd like to serve that have broken cars? And they're like, well, actually, I'd rather, I quite like people who have cars that they love. I'm like, what do you mean cars that they love? Like new cars that are under warranty? No. Like old cars that people have had for 20, 30, 40, 50 years that have been handed down through generations, cars that have names. Oh, you want to serve people that own cars that have names? Yeah, I think that's what I want to do. Now, what kind of cars? Well, I've got experience of working with Buicks and Chevrolets and Mustangs, but not much else. So you want to serve people that have cars that have names that were made by Buick or Chevrolet or Mustangs? Yeah, I do. Well, how many people in this locality own a Mustang? I don't know. Well, should we go find that out first? Right? And now we can check viability. Who are the people you're looking to serve? Is people who are passionate about keeping their Mustang on the road for the rest of ever. And it looking sweet as, right? That's who they're looking to serve. See how if you dig into that question first, you start to find clarity, you start to check viability. What are the problems you're looking to solve for them? Well, the problem I'm looking to solve for them is, I want to make sure that their car is well run. Well, nobody gives a damn about that. Most of these people want to keep the car in their own garage. They feel that part of the passion is being able to treat and take care of it themselves. And we got a problem here. Well, maybe not. So how do we solve that problem? Well, what people want is they want to make sure that the car is future-proof. They want to make sure it's got a documented history. So when they pass it on to somebody new, like a family member or loved one, they understand how they can keep this thing on the road. So your mission statement is keeping Mustangs on the road forever. Right? You see how that changes things when you dig into those. Now what happens is if all of a sudden the world goes digital, people can't get their cars in. You're not like, oh man, I've got to pivot my business. I've got to do what I've always done. Only they can't get to the shops. I've got to bring the shop to them. Or I can't just work with enough people in my community. How do I change this? Well, I want to keep I've got to start a YouTube channel. I've got to start podcasting about this. I've got to start being able to, because I care about the problem I'm trying to solve, not the four walls of my business. And this is what I'm trying to get people more passionate about when they think about what they're looking to go into. When people say they want to open a restaurant, that's like trying to say I'm looking to feed everybody who's hungry. It's destined to fail. And without that clarity of work first, that's why most businesses fail. Because they want to be the thing as opposed to help the people.
I love that you said that. And I love that you also had that clarity that you just spoke about in your own business. You said, you told me I was talking about pivoting, and then you said, I've done what I've always done. Right. You stayed in your lane. Obviously it maybe changed a little bit. Huge changes, right? Like I went from caring about my mileage
points and making sure I hit status on every airline to ensure that I could get through queues, to the conversation we had before we hit record today of caring about how does my tech not fail and what's my backup on my backup on my backup, and what can I do now the opportunity presents that I don't have to leave my family. What does that mean that I can give back to other areas of my life by utilizing the way I do what I do in a new way, where for once technology has become our friend rather than our enemy. But for me, like, everybody was wondering what to do. By March the 15th, I was front and center of every one of my clients saying, okay, something's going crazy. What do we need to do to help? How do we get ahead of this thing? And they're like, well, it's going to be like back to normal in 2, 3, 4 weeks. I'm like, well, what if it's not? Because if it's not, and you just stand still and wait, then look what happens. And I spent a lot of 2020 explaining to people that patience and waiting are not the same thing.
Explain that.
Well, when people find themselves in chaos, the natural behavior is just to wait for things to go back to normal. And they won't. So what happens is once people realize they're not going to go back to normal, is they're not in the same place they were when they stopped doing anything. They're actually further back because the rest of the world has all moved forward. Being patient is understanding that what I have to do is catch breath. I can't hustle my way out of this. Is think of it like if you're running a 26.2 mile race. Is you realize it starts getting hard at mile 7, don't start sprinting. Right? It is understand you've still got a long way to go, get prepared to go the distance, but what are you doing methodically at a slowed down pace in order to make sure that whatever scenario you might see in front of you, when that scenario presents itself, you're like, I already thought this. Which is what we do, like when we book a restaurant reservation, right? You look at the menu ahead of time, think, what might I order? Before you sat there and somebody puts you on the hot seat, hands you a menu and said, what would you like, sir, madam, right? Like, you get ready for those conversations. So why don't we get ready for the other steps that could be coming by being patient to say we might not be able to pull like the cord on this. And another point on that patience thing is entrepreneurs are the worst at this, particularly new entrepreneurs, particularly a lot of people in the audience that you talk to, is they want the finish line to come real quick. So they have an idea, they support a domain, they find a domain name, they go to wix.com, they build the website and they say, ta-da, I've launched a business. And they haven't got a single customer or an idea or a product. And what they do is they take all of the glory. Congratulations, you're going to be a huge success at this. All the social posts get all the buzz that they could have had in place when they actually could use that inertia for something that is going to benefit them commercially.
Well, they have CEO. They have CEO in their business card, you know?
Right. But they take the payoff too early. That's again what I mean by patience is doing the work in the dark is half of the things that nobody tells you about on Instagram because they're too busy trying to get vanity likes, right? It's being brave enough to be able to say, okay, I'm doing this thing and I'm going to lay the foundations out and I get ready. And then when you bring something to launch, people are like, how'd that happen? You work fast. I'm like, no, I just worked in the dark for a while. So that when I launched, I was ready to be able to actually capitalize upon the momentum and inertia I might take.
When people don't have the correct patience like that, and when they do kind of win first, artificially maybe, and they take those congratulations too seriously, what ends up happening?
A lot of things. Sometimes people keep getting lucky and keep growing onwards. Like we've seen it happen at Vegas, right? People get lucky, win once, think all of a sudden they've been touched by some form of superior power and keep playing the tables and finish the end of the night thinking that they should be in the World Series of Poker, right? That does happen sometimes. More often than not, though, what happens is they bank on that early win. They build their reputation and ego around that early win, and then they try to roll the dice again and it doesn't work out so well for them. Then they give up.
Do you feel like that happens a lot in your space, in the coaching space, in kind of
hugely every form of personal brand space? Because to operate in a personal brand is you need a fairly healthy ego. Mm-hmm. Like that's a fact. You've got to think reasonably highly of yourself if you're going to stick your name on the cover of a book or you're going to stick your name over the front door of a business. You got to think that you're something, right? Or that you've got something of value. And the reason people give up is because it gets hard. And then you get asked to be able to question yourself a little bit more. You get asked to be able to say, are you what you said you really are? If you're building any form of like personal brand business, is the first thing you need is visibility, but the second thing you need is credibility. And that credibility piece sometimes ends up lacking because the business starts based on past credibility of the thing you used to be. And then you get started and the initial inertia has disappeared. And the thing you used to be is no longer the credibility you need to be the thing you are, because we now need proven track records of the thing you are, not the thing you used to be. So it's the fact that this is a never-ending circle. One of the things that I should have written about and exactly where to start that I didn't, but I think is perhaps even more profound, is the idea that we should always all be running two businesses anyway. You should have the business you're running and the business you're growing, and they should be two separate things. And it can be within the same business. What do I mean by that? Is when I started this personal brand business back in 2008, my primary business was a coaching and consulting business. So I would speak in order to be able to win inquiries and opportunities to then deliver coaching and consulting services. I had retainers on both those things, and providing I was pretty good at that stuff, I'd have enough baseline revenue for me to be able to support my family and do the things that mattered. The business I was growing at the time would have been my author and professional speaking business. So I'm working on that as my side hustle while serving my consulting and coaching clients. What then happens over a period of time is that, one of those consultancy arms opens up a niche within a particular industry that looks to be more lucrative if I go deeper. So hold on, now I've got a conflict about the business I'm running. What do I start to look go? Oh, well, my speaking on author business now becomes the business I'm running, not the business I'm growing. The deep dive into the consultancy opportunity becomes the business that I'm then growing. You see how that becomes like an elevated step up. The business I was growing at some point becomes the business I'm running. And if you want a real life example of seeing how that played out, is please remember that Amazon used to be an online bookstore, right? Not that long ago. And what happened is they're running their online bookstore and they're thinking, and what else? Well, what about audiobooks? And they're thinking, well, and about what else, right? But they don't jump all the way up like that. They go one step at a time. Business I'm running, business I'm growing. Business I'm growing becomes the business I'm running. Okay, what's the business I'm growing? And if you don't have something that you're growing as well as something you're running, then that's when you get stuck. Because the business you're running becomes under threat and you've got no other option. And then what you're happy to do is to blame something else, when what you should have been thinking is that you can't build something that is solid. Everything you build in a business in today's market is water. So you got to keep building vessels to keep to keep hold of the water. Because otherwise somebody bursts your existing vessel, you can't move the water.
So speaking super practically, and I love this because I think whether you're starting again or whether you're pivoting or whether maybe you have a job or you had a job that you don't like I talk to a lot of people that maybe they want to quit their 9-to-5 job. They're passionate about X, but they don't know how to take that kind of hobby and make it something that they get paid for. And this process is exactly what you just described here. You have the business that maybe your 9-to-5, which is, think about it as the business that you're running and the business that you get paid for.
And then you can start this little side thing over here as it's a business you're growing. And once you built that business you're growing to a point that it allows you to ditch your job, then what you do is you can start that, but you don't breathe a sigh of relief then. What you then start thinking on is, what's the business that I'm growing? Let's take your mechanic again, right? He can be working a job for somebody. And then on the business he's growing, he can be building his brand around Mustangs and the fact he's that guy, and he can produce 2 videos a week, look after 3 of his friends' cars, can, earn himself an extra $600, $800, $1,500 a month from his side hustle about cars. When that becomes 5, 6, 8, 9 grand a month, he goes and hands his notice in at the BMW dealership that he's worked for 9 years and got a great deal of expertise about understanding how businesses are working. But while he's running that business, he's thinking about payroll and who are good people and what are the things that are happening here that I've never given any attention to that I should, because I've learned that success leaves clues. So what you might want to be looking at is these well-oiled machines of the businesses that you're involved in that are running. What do I like? What am I going to take with me? What am I going to leave behind? And then when you step into your new thing, you've got wisdom that has been earned through experience because you took a 360 degree while you're inside the machine. So all of us should be thinking that all of the time. And that's what stops you getting stale. Like nobody wants to do the same job forever. I've owned this business I'm in right now for 15 years, and it hasn't been the same business for more than 15 months. And you ask anybody that's had a business for a long time that question, and they'll tell you a version of the same.
Do you feel like you're doing the same thing in the sense of the overall direction that you're headed? Because remember at the beginning, you were saying, I'm doing the same thing that I've always done. You're consistently providing value in that way, but you're saying just the focus has changed?
Let's give you another example. If you think of, let's take a chef like Gordon Ramsay. He's doing what he's always done. Making great food, trying to put a smile on people's face through adding entertainment to culinary delights. That's what he's always done. Now, the modality and the mediums in which you can do that thing can change over a period of time once you compound success. But you have to have been able to build that mobile credibility over a period of time, right? Is you have to have been the good upstart trainee chef under somebody that was fantastic who taught, but you want to be the best in your field at every given point in time. I do a lot of work helping coach other speakers on the business side of professional speaking, more so than the stagecraft piece. And I do this just in service to like our national association and other speaker groups that I'm part of, where I feel an obligation of being part of a profession to uphold a standard. And something I say to them that I think is relevant to everybody looking to start a business is you should always be better than your fee.
Be better than your fee. Okay.
Like, is people ask, what should I charge? I'm like, whatever you feel comfortable that you can be better than is your fee. Because if you're not better than your fee, you won't go the distance. Because there'll be a point where like she was all right or he was all right, but not for that money. But think again about the restaurant scenario is we've all been in a situation where we've had a $10 meal and we'd be like, yeah, but it was food.
Mm-hmm.
But if that was $90, we'd be like, this was garbage. You wouldn't serve it to a dog. So the perception changes. And that's what I mean about always being better than your fee. Whatever you're charging, you have to have certainty in your own mind that the other person is going to be like, dang, that was worth it. Whatever the number is.
There's a glut of online influencers, coaches, people who are starting and running masterminds, or even people who are helping other people who want to become coaches that push the idea forward that high ticket offer. There's this whole idea of a funnel and all that.
I know.
High ticket offer is easier or better than a low ticket offer. And, with everything we've talked about and, we're discussing this idea of where to start and this progression, do you agree with that? Or would you say that it's better to graduate your way through different pricing tiers as you are maybe have more experience that allow you to do what you just said?
You've got to believe that you're worth it and then go on to be worth it. The reason that people sell courses about high ticket offers as being the way to go is because that leans into their ability to be able to worth what they're charging you for the course to sell high ticket offers. Just the basic math on that is if I'm teaching you a system that can help you get 10 clients paying you $10,000, i.e. you generated 100,000 in revenue, and I'm charging you 12.5 for the privilege to learn how to work that system, in their head, then what they've managed to be able to do is to say, well, that is worth it. I'm better than my fee. I teach people to make 100K and I charge 12.5 for it. And that's great if what happens is these people go on to be able to achieve those results. But it's only great if these people go on to achieve these results of earning 100 grand and the people that have paid them those high ticket prices are glad that they paid it. And my experience has been that there are a lot of people who've paid big money to go on courses that have been based on the promise of somebody selling somebody the promise that have said, yeah, it was all right. Like, do you want to build a business where somebody says, yeah, it was all right? Or do you want to be like, dang, that's the person I need to work with. Dang, that's the kind of results I'm looking for. And this is a choice. There are a lot of people who want to make a fast buck. That'll never change. But if you want to create a legacy, you want to build something sustainable, I still find it fascinating in the speaking industry where people want to boast about their speaking fee that they got paid once. Like, there's a difference between that and what the kind of life that you've been able to build holistically. across this. And you may catch like a little tone of where I'm coming from on this, is that I've been in this space long enough to understand where the truth is and where the lies are. And if you're selling hope on a stick, somebody will always buy. Like if you've got a promise that is preying on the vulnerable, telling them that what you've got is the secret formula to get their, all of their troubles away, somebody will always write a check out for that. But the missing difference between influence and manipulation in my mind is integrity. And if you're brave enough to wake up the next day after taking someone's money and still feel good about it, and if you're brave enough to 6 months on down the tracks still feel good about it, if you're the kind of person that 3 years down the tracks you get a phone call from a friend of a friend of a friend of somebody who worked with you once upon a time saying, I hope that you can help me like you helped my friend, like that's what real businesses are built on. So don't go running at big numbers if you don't have certainty that you can achieve an outcome that is worth more than that for others. You want to understand how to price your service? You should be charging no more than 10% of the difference that you make in somebody else's life. General rule of thumb.
And this is for things like coaching and
anything.
Okay.
Anything, but definitely an intangible service-based business. Like, if an accountant wants to charge 10 grand, well, that accountant should be saving you 100 grand a year in taxes. If, the mechanic is going to charge you $1,500 a year to take care of your car, well, it wants to mean that 10 years on from now, your car is worth like 150 grand because of that loving maintenance. But people talk about value like it's a perception. It's not a perception. It's a story that we tell ourselves that leads to some form of inevitable outcome. Like the math has to add up on it somewhere. And there's a chapter we write about and exactly where to start about making it work on paper. Yeah. And this is a mistake that many people dig into, particularly from starting their own business. If somebody says something to you like you're really good at that, like you should do that as a business. You should do that as a business, the thing you're really good at. And it just doesn't work on paper. Like I must have said it to so many people okay, you're good at it, you like it, people would like to buy it. How much do you think they might pay? Well, I think they might pay like £8. Okay. And how many do you think you can do in a day? Well, I think I can do 7 in a day. So, okay, you can do 7 in a day, 7 8s are 48. Okay. And you need premises for this. Yeah, I need some premises for this. What kind of premises you want? Well, I want like 1,500 square feet. And you start running this out and I'm like, you got a hobby that even if you tank this thing and it goes like with everything as well as you thought it would do, this is going to cost you 80 grand a year. Do you love what you do enough for you to pay 80 grand to do it and never have the opportunity of it being able to be more than that? And that's, again, just a roadblock that people jump into. And it's not making a business plan and trying to get a loan from the bank, and you're not a startup or trying to raise funds, etc. It's just show me a model that says X number of people in X number of time paying Y amount of dollars with this amount of cost of goods, with this level of cadence of how it might work, and prove that you've got viable. And I'll tell you what happens is once you prove you've got viable, your confidence goes through the roof. Once you prove it's viable, you start to get the tenacity to be able to run at this. You start to lose the, I hope this works out. And you replace it with the, how do I make this work? Or how do I make this work better? Or how well can I make this work? Or what obstacles could I bump into that could stop this from working the way I know it could work? That's when you know you're onto something. Because when you're not, fingers crossed, I hope this works, is what are the things that I'm in control of that affect how this works that can allow this to work better?
Pulling the levers that need to be pulled to create more of the result that you're looking for.
And understanding you're more in control than you think you are.
Phil, I want to ask you about confidence, because you mentioned the confidence piece. And, as we're wrapping up here, we discussed, how to start. We discussed getting the clarity. We discussed kind of this flow. And I think you gave some incredible practical advice on, you're not just because someone gives you a compliment that you're good at something doesn't mean you should quit your job. Get a job, maybe have a job in the space you're looking to continue working in. To your example of the BMW dealership, starting the other car business and using that to plateau and position yourself through life. But you mentioned something in the beginning, and this really resonated with me through this book. I have friends and family members who they always seem to have the idea of something else that's existing. Like, oh, there was that, that business. I had that idea like 8 years ago. I knew that would be a great thing. And it's that question in my head of like, why didn't you do it? Why not you? And I asked myself that. I'm on a path of discovery. Like, I want to discover what my potential is. And I feel like so many people aren't hungry enough to discover just what their point of potential is. How far can they go? And here at the Jono Show, we're all about that. And so, but speak to someone who maybe has some confidence issues because they have told themselves they're going to start. They've told themselves they've got a great idea about something that they want to do, and they quit or they give up, or things in life happen. They get somebody pregnant, they have a baby, they get sick, car breaks down, bills happen, these different things happen. And then it's like this cycle. Maybe they continue paying the coaching fees, they buy the downloadable content, they do whatever, and they never actually start anything. And you get someone after 2, 3, 4 years of that who are discouraged. They lack a lot of confidence because they haven't gotten any big wins and built that. Where does someone start from there?
Okay. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, there's a lot. I've just dropped the bomb, right? 10 minutes.
Let's do a few things here. One is the confidence thing. Is people often say, I'm not confident, I'm not confident, I'm not confident. And there's a strong reason why. Confidence cannot exist without experience. It can't. Confidence without experience is arrogance. And that isn't a thing that many people would choose to be. So if you're lacking in confidence, you're not. You're lacking in experience. And remember that experience isn't measured in years. Like, I know people who've been doing stuff for 20 years that shouldn't have been doing it at all, right? Experience is measured in how often you've done something to a high standard. So be brave enough to say, I'm going to get myself some experience in this thing. And then earn your stripes in that experience. Now, we talked about coaching businesses a lot. And that doesn't mean run around and coach people for free, because that isn't experience. You've got somebody who's going to say nice things to you whilst you're saying nice things to them, all under this ruse of experience. It's like the fact that my 2-year-old twin daughters can think that what they're doing is helping mummy with dinner. They're not helping mummy with dinner, right? Like, that's what a lot of people start working on, is experience that isn't real experience. But what you can do is you can, operate at 20% of your normal fees for a period of 6 weeks to be able to allow yourself to be able to get the experience about your process in your work, or to get some reps into your work, or to take what you've been very good at in a narrow field and span it out to some other areas and give yourself some ability. How do I get experience learning about new industries? I do things like this, right? I'm gaining experience of my own thoughts around how I might package ideas, etc., by having questions after me that I haven't asked myself. So take the time to be on podcasts, or have other people quiz you about, how will this work, and play out hypothetical scenarios. That's where experiences come from. But do whatever you can to get reps in. And the more reps you get in, the more your confidence will grow, because then when you find yourself in a situation that's unknown to you, you're like, well, I've been in something like this before. That's how I can show up for this moment. That kind of leads towards if you've been trying something for 2, 3, 4 years and it's not working out, there's a strong possibility that you're the problem. And more often than not, it's an anxiety of being at the water's edge and not wanting to jump in. Because the second you jump in, you go from having potential to being in the game. And now your potential that has been such a shroud of armor to you, your potential that has been something that you've really enjoyed holding on to, because so many people have told you your potential is so mighty fine, that you're scared of losing that blanket of security, because the second you step into the arena, your potential is now no longer the thing you're going to be judged by. You're going to be judged by your performance. And here's the point where you're going to have to get over yourself. If you're a creature of huge potential who fails to be able to bring that potential into the game, you cheated yourself. So be brave enough to say that if you believe you have potential, convert your potential into experience, and then what you have is wisdom. Nobody meets anybody in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and says, my goodness, you've got so much potential. Right? That isn't the story that is put out to people later, is be brave enough to be able to go get some battle wounds, go get some experience. And there's something you can do that helps provide you some confidence. And it's often a mistake in the way that people structure their business. Is if I gave a child a cupcake, what part of the cupcake would every child like to eat?
The top.
Right? They want frostings, sprinkles, cherries, everything that's on top of the cupcake is what the kiddie wants. People treat their businesses the same way. They want frostings and sprinkles, etc., and none of the base. What I encourage business owners to do is to spend no more than a third of your time building the base of your cupcake. What is the base of your cupcake? It's the money you need to be making. So if your household expenses are at, say, 10,000, and you need to make 10,000 a month, then what you need to have is you need a 10,000 a month base of cupcake. Now, if you're spending a third of your time covering your household overhead, you got 2/3 of your time to play. 2/3 of your time can be spent saying, well, what are the sprinkles? What are the frosting, etc. But if you don't look after the base of your cupcake, you're in trouble. What did that mean to me? In March, when every one of my speaking gigs disappeared, when every part of my future projected like book earnings and stuff disappeared, like many people in my industry are like, oh, damn. Difference being is that I have a base of cupcake that includes book royalties, that includes audiobook royalties, that includes retained consultancies, includes licensing agreements, includes some real estate investments that my business has allowed me to be able to create. That meant when the world went upside down, it went, well, I might not be having sprinkles like I used to, but I tell you what, we still got cupcake, and cupcake's more than enough. And in your scenario, that base of cupcake might be your job. It might be just hold on to that until all of a sudden you've replaced that base of cupcake elsewhere. Because I promise you, if you're trying to live on sprinkles and frosting, that's when you make bad decisions time and time and time again. And what starts to happen quickly is sprinkles and frostings doesn't taste like sprinkles and frostings anymore. It tastes like the only thing that could nourish you before life goes too far. You feel sick of it all. So do the work under the surface, build the foundation right. Create the non-sexy stuff that allows you to enjoy the sexy stuff like it's sexy.
That's powerful. That is really powerful. And that, folks, is exactly where to start. I love it. Phil, thank you so much for coming on this show and sharing some of your wisdom with us. I highly recommend, I did a book review on this on my channel, but I really seriously, I'm not just saying this because you're here on the show. I've bought it, like I said, several times for people who I really care about. And this book is handy. It's right up there, right near Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Great book. Ryan's a great writer as well.
Yes. And I appreciate you really, really taking the time for this. Where can people connect with you if they're looking to just connect with you personally, hear more of your brand? Where can they reach out?
You bet. I'm pretty easy to find. If you Google Phil space M space Jones, middle initial will help you find the right version of me. You can plug in on any of the social channels. Instagram and LinkedIn is where I show up more as a person rather than just broadcasting content. So if you've got a question, a comment, things you want to pick up on from this show, then reach out. Always happy to be able to hear from you. Website is philmjones.com if you want to learn more about that. And if you want to find any of my books, go to where people sell books and you should be able to find me. If you can't find me, tell me on Instagram because that's my problem, not yours.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for being here. And I hope everyone's got a lot of value out of this. I encourage you to check Phil out and we'll see you soon. We'll talk soon.
See ya.